Lost Season 1 works because it understands something a lot of mystery shows forget. The mystery can pull people in, but it cannot be the thing holding the whole show together. A strange island is interesting. A monster in the jungle is interesting. A radio signal that has been looping for 16 years is interesting. But none of that lasts if the people trapped there feel thin. Lost Season 1 became perfect television because every mystery had a person attached to it, and every person had some private damage the island slowly dragged into the open. The pilot starts with one of the cleanest television openings ever made. Jack opens his eye in the bamboo, runs toward the beach, and the show does not waste time explaining itself. It throws us into screaming, fire, wreckage, panic, and people trying to survive before they even understand what happened. That choice matters because Lost never begins as a puzzle box. It begins as a disaster. The island comes later. The questions come later. First, we understand the basic human situation. These people were flying somewhere, something impossible happened, and now they are alive when they should probably be dead. That is the foundation of the whole season. Before the show asks what the island is, it asks who these people become when their old lives are stripped away. Jack becomes the leader almost by accident because he is the first person who can function in the chaos. Kate becomes useful because movement is easier for her than confession. Sawyer becomes cruel because cruelty lets him control how people look at him. Locke becomes reborn because the island gives him back the one thing life took from him. Already in the first stretch of the show, the island is not just a location. It is a pressure system. It takes whatever each person was hiding and forces it into behavior. The flashback structure is the smartest part of Season 1. On paper, it sounds simple. Each episode focuses on one survivor and shows pieces of their life before the crash. But the reason it works so well is timing. The flashbacks are not just biography, they are reveals. They change what the present-day story means. We watch Jack act like the dependable hero, then we see the weight of his father and understand that his need to fix people is not clean heroism. We watch Locke seem calm, strange, almost mystical, then the wheelchair reveal turns the whole episode inside out. We watch Sawyer act like a selfish predator, then discover he has been living inside the wound that created him. That is why Walkabout is still one of the strongest episodes of television from that era. The episode does not just say Locke feels changed by the island. It lets us watch him walk around with a confidence that feels slightly too large for the situation, and only at the end do we learn why. The reveal that he was paralyzed before the crash gives the island emotional meaning before it gives it scientific meaning. The show does not answer what the island is. It gives us a better question: what kind of place can do this to a man? And what will he become if he believes the island chose him? Locke is the key to why Season 1 feels so alive. Jack sees the island as a problem to manage until rescue arrives. Locke sees it as a place with intention. The season does not rush to prove either of them right. It lets their conflict grow naturally out of who they are. Jack is a doctor. He trusts action, evidence, and responsibility. Locke is a man who spent his life being humiliated, dismissed, and trapped. When the island gives him a miracle, he cannot treat it like weather. To Jack, Locke is dangerous because belief can make people reckless. To Locke, Jack is blind because doubt can make a miracle look like an accident. That tension gives the season its spine. A weaker show would have made the island mysteries the main event immediately. Lost lets the human argument carry the strange stuff. The monster is frightening because nobody understands it, but it also becomes a way to test belief. The hatch is exciting because it is buried in the ground, but it also becomes a symbol of Locke's faith. The numbers are creepy because they seem to follow Hurley everywhere, but they also reveal how badly he wants his suffering to have an explanation. The island keeps offering signs, and each character interprets those signs through the shape of their own pain. Season 1 also knows how to build an ensemble without making everyone feel equal in a bland way. Some characters get more focused than others, but almost everyone has a clear function. Saeed gives the group intelligence, discipline, and moral tension. He is one of the few people capable of doing ugly things while still seeming aware of the cost. Charlie brings addiction, insecurity, and the need to be loved after fame has already hollowed him out. Claire gives the season one of its strongest survival anxieties because pregnancy turns the island from an adventure setting into a place where normal human vulnerability cannot be avoided. Sun and Jin begin as a marriage the audience is encouraged to judge too quickly, and then the show slowly changes the frame. That is one of Season 1's best habits. It makes you revise your first impression. Sawyer is introduced as the obvious villain of the beach, hoarding supplies and insulting everyone, but the season keeps finding the sadness underneath without fully excusing him. Jin looks controlling and harsh early on, but the flashbacks show the pressure, shame, and compromise that turned him into that version of himself. Michael can seem angry and difficult, but the show keeps grounding him in the panic of a father who barely knows his son and is suddenly expected to protect him from an impossible place. The characters are not twists in the cheap sense. They are people the show asks us to look at again. The pacing is another reason the season works so well. Lost Season 1 has 25 episodes, and that should make it feel bloated. Somehow, for most of the run, the length becomes a strength. The season has room to breathe. People argue over water, they decide where to live, they bury the dead, they form small routines, they build shelter, they become annoyed with each other, they joke, flirt, lie, steal, prey, and break down. That ordinary survival texture makes the impossible parts feel more real. If the show only chased the monster and the hatch, the island would become a theme park. The beach life gives the strange material something to interrupt. The best episodes understand that the crash did not create new people. It exposed the people who were already there. Jack was already trapped inside the need to save. Kate was already running. Sawyer was already punishing himself through other people's hatred. Locke was already desperate to believe his life had meaning. Sayid was already haunted by what he had done. Sun and Jin were already losing each other. Charlie was already bargaining with himself. The island simply removes the distractions. There is nowhere to run except deeper into the jungle, and even there the past follows. This is why the flashbacks rarely feel like filler in Season 1. They arrive at the exact moment when the present needs emotional context. When Jack struggles with leadership, the show shows us his father and the origin of his impossible standard. When Kate's trust becomes an issue, we see the life of escape that trained her to disappear before anyone can hold her. When Sawyer's behavior reaches a new low, the flashback reveals the original injury behind the performance. The past does not stop the present, it infects it. The season also has an unusually strong sense of ending. Almost every episode knows where to leave the audience. Sometimes it is a reveal, sometimes a small emotional reversal, sometimes a new question that makes the island feel larger. The end of Walkabout is the obvious example, but the whole season is full of these clean final turns. A character we thought we understood becomes stranger. A piece of the island becomes more impossible. A relationship shifts by 1 degree. The show was built for weekly television, and it understood the power of making the viewer need the next hour without making the current hour feel incomplete. The mystery works because it is rationed. The show does not dump mythology onto the audience too quickly. The first season gives us the monster, the polar bear, the French transmission, Ethan, the hatch, the whispers, the black rock, the others as an unseen threat, and the numbers. That sounds like a lot, but the season spaces it out carefully. Most of the time, the mystery appears as a disturbance inside a character story. The polar bear is not just a weird image, it makes the island feel physically wrong. The transmission is not just lore, it tells the survivors that being stranded here is not a new event. Ethan is not just a villain, he proves that the crash survivors are not alone and that the island has a social order they do not understand. The hatch might be the best example of the season's control. It is introduced as an object, then becomes an obsession, then becomes a spiritual test. Locke and Boone digging it up gives the season one of its strongest slow burns because the hatch is simple enough to understand visually. It is a door in the ground. You do not need a long explanation. You see it, you want to know what is inside, and the longer the show refuses to open it, the more it starts to mean. For Locke, it becomes proof that the island is asking something from him. For the audience, it becomes a promise. The finale keeps that promise just long enough to show the ladder descending into darkness, then cuts away before giving us the answer. It is frustrating in the exact way good serialized television is supposed to be frustrating. Boone's death is where the season proves it is not only playing games. His death changes the emotional temperature of the show. It makes Locke's faith dangerous. It pushes Jack into rage. It breaks Shannon's shallow surface and turns grief into something messy and irrational. The show needed a death like that because survival stories lose tension if everyone important feels protected. Boone's death is not just there to shock the audience. It makes the island's demands feel real. It also makes the Jack-Locke conflict personal. Jack can argue against Locke's belief all he wants, but once someone dies inside that belief, the argument gets blood on it. The raft storyline gives the season its other major engine. Michael building the raft works because it is practical and emotional at the same time. On the practical side, it gives the survivors a visible plan. On the emotional side, it gives Michael a way to become Walt's father through action. He cannot rewrite the years he missed. He cannot force closeness by wanting it. But he can build something with his hands and try to get his son off the island. That makes the finale hit harder, because the raft is not just an escape attempt. It is Michael's proof of love. The finale is so strong because it understands separation. The beach survivors are opening the hatch. The raft group is out on the water. The past is pressing against the present. The island feels bigger than it has all season. Then the others arrive, take Walt, and turn rescue into horror. That ending works because it attacks the most human hope in the story. The audience wants the raft to succeed because the characters want it. We understand the labor that went into it. We understand Michael's need to protect Walt. So when the boat appears, the first feeling is relief. Then the scene twists. The line between salvation and threat disappears in seconds. That is lost at its best. It takes a simple emotional desire and makes the island answer it in the worst possible way. Michael wants to save his son, and the attempt leads directly to Walt being taken. Locke wants the hatch to open, and the opening does not bring peace or clarity. Jack wants control, and the island keeps giving him situations where control is useless. The season finale does not just ask what happens next. It leaves every major character facing the cost of what they wanted. What makes Season 1 feel close to perfect is not that every answer was planned from the beginning or that every subplot is flawless. The perfection is in the experience of watching it. The show had momentum, atmosphere, character, danger, and mystery all working together at once. It felt popular without feeling shallow. It had big network TV hooks, but it also had moments of silence and grief. It could end an episode with a shocking reveal, then spend the next one on guilt, faith, addiction, marriage, or fatherhood. That balance is hard to repeat because it depends on confidence. Lost Season 1 trusted that the audience would care about people sitting on a beach as much as they cared about whatever was in the jungle. It also arrived with the right kind of ambition. Season 1 feels huge, but it still feels intimate. The island could be anything, yet the show keeps returning to faces. Jack staring at responsibility, Locke smiling like a man who has found religion, Kate deciding whether to run again, Sawyer pretending not to care, Hurley trying to stay kind in a place that keeps proving kindness is fragile, Sun quietly revealing she understands English, changing an entire marriage with one sentence. These are the moments that make the mythology matter. Without them, the island is only a list of questions. The best thing about Season 1 is that it makes the audience feel like a survivor too. We know only what the characters know. We learn the geography slowly. The caves, the beach, the jungle, the hatch, the wreckage, the black rock. Each new place expands the island without fully explaining it. The show creates the feeling of a world being discovered piece by piece. That is why the first season has such a strong mood. It is not just suspense. It is curiosity mixed with dread. Every answer feels like it might be useful, and every discovery feels like it might make things worse. The show also knew how to use contrast. The island is beautiful and terrifying. The beach can look peaceful while everyone is still starving, wounded, and afraid. The jungle can seem alive before anything actually appears. The music can make a small reunion feel enormous. That contrast gives Season 1 its dreamlike quality. The characters are trapped in paradise, which is part of the cruelty. If the island looked like pure hell, the story would be simpler. Instead, it looks like a place where someone could be healed, chosen, punished, or erased. Depending on the person, it might be all of those things. Lost Season 1 is perfect television because it does not separate character from mystery. The questions are exciting because they press against people who already feel broken. The flashbacks work because they turn strangers into stories. The island works because it gives every survivor a different version of the same problem. What do you do when your old life is gone, but the person you became inside that life is still with you? That is why the season still holds up. It has the clean hook of a survival story, the engine of a mystery, and the emotional weight of a character drama. It can be watched for clues, for atmosphere, for twists, or for people trying to survive themselves. Very few shows manage to be that accessible and that strange at the same time. Lost Season 1 did it almost immediately. It opened with an eye, a crash, and a beach full of people who did not yet understand where they were. By the end, the island still had not explained itself, but the show had made one thing clear. The real power of Lost was never just the promise of answers. It was the feeling that every answer would cost somebody something.